So, good evening. Hi. So I'm Shri Kumar. I'm research scholar at Center for Women Studies, and my colleague is Vanda Rakhi, and she's also a research scholar from the Rakhi Center for Education.
Studies,
Yes. Yeah. So now this is Feminist Friday, and this is our 42nd session. And she actually gave this idea of let's do some readings on education, and one of the critical texts being Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paul Freire. We'll be doing this in this today's session. But before we do that, just some the idea of this Feminist Friday is to create a space where people from different centers who probably are not in contact with feminist text could come and share their ideas. This is completely non-hierarchical and safe space, so it's not like we claim that we know more than anybody else in this. We also try to keep multiple language, so language is not a bar. हम अपना टेक्स्ट जो भी हमारी समझ है इस विषय को लेके वो इंग्लिश, हिंदी और बाकी भी लैंग्वेज जिसमें आप कंफर्टेबल है उसमें आप शेयर कर सकते हो. एंड लास्ट इज द आइडिया इज टू सारे के सारे जो भी एकेडमिक टेक्स्ट जिसको हम मानते हैं उनको किस तरह से सिंप्लीफाई किया जाए सो दैट इट कैन बी एक्सेस बाय मासेस जो प्रॉब्ली इनके पास ये टेक्स्ट पढ़ने का मौका नहीं है, तो हमारे और उनको फिर हम कैसे अपनी लाइफ में इम्प्लीमेंट कर सकें. विद दिस थॉट आई थिंक राखी और हमारा पहला इंटरेक्शन हुआ था और हम लोग की ये समझ रहे थे कि किस तरह से इस टेक्स्ट को जो कि पेडागॉजी ऑफ द ऑप्रेस्ड है, जो बहुत ही फाउंडेशनल टेक्स्ट माना जाता है, तो उस पर आज हम बात करेंगे. और बहुत ज़्यादा हमने प्लान भी नहीं किया है और बहुत ज़रूरी भी नहीं कि ये टेक्स्ट कम्प्लीटली आपने पढ़ा भी हो, ठीक है. तो हम उस सिंपल टॉपिक्स पे बात करेंगे एंड विल ट्राई टू कीप इट ओपन फॉर एवरीवन सो दैट आपको जिस पॉइंट पे लगता है वी कैन शेयर योर इनपुट्स. सो बिफोर वी स्टार्ट, कभी इसका नाम सुना है इस टेक्स्ट का? कभी किसी ने क्लास में रेफर किया हो या फिर कभी लिटरेचर में कहीं पे सुना हो? हैव समवन हर्ड ऑफ इट? Like in what context? Like how was it?
I am also interested in education.
Okay.
So
Okay.
from the PhD proposal, I started.
Yes. So ये बहुत बार हमें भी रेफर किया जाता था एंड हमारा ऐसा मानना है कि जब तक उस ओरिजिनल टेक्स्ट को ना पढ़ो तब तक वी डोंट अंडरस्टैंड द ग्रेविटी ऑफ द डेप्थ ऑफ द थिंकर इटसेल्फ. इससे बहुत बार फूको का नाम जेएनयू में बहुत सुनने में आता है. एवरीबॉडी यूजेस फूको. सो दिस इज वन ऑफ दोस टेक्स्ट कि हाँ, पेडागॉजी ऑफ द ऑप्रेस्ड इज वेरी फाउंडेशनल. तो क्या एक्सपीरियंस रहा था आपका? लाइक हाउ डू यू रिमेंबर कमिंग अक्रॉस दिस टेक्स्ट फर्स्ट एंड हाउ इज इट कंसिडर्ड एज अ रेवोल्यूशनरी?
मेरा एक्सपीरियंस ये था कि मैंने जब ये पहली बार पढ़ा था, मैंने एमफिल के कोर्स वर्क के थ्रू पढ़ा था. तो मैंने पूरा टेक्स्ट पढ़ा था एंड आई वाज क्वाइट I don't have the right word. I was quite impressed. I was quite taken by the idea that जो author जिस तरीके से एक education में टीचर के रोल की बात कर रहे थे और पूरा का पूरा जो कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ ऑपरेशन जिस तरीके से उन्होंने लेके और उसके अलावा किस तरीके से अलग अलग बहुत एक सिग्निफिकेंट कॉन्सेप्ट्स लार्जर ह्यूमैनिटी को लेके वो प्रेजेंट कर रहे हैं. सो तब मैंने ये पढ़ा था एमफिल में, जो कि मैंने किया था, मैंने पढ़ा होगा 2018 में. उसके बाद 2018 में मैंने पहली बार पढ़ा था. तो
उसी से दूसरी चीज़ निकल गई थी. हम सब एक स्कूल टाइम में, इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग, मुझे याद है कि जब भी क्लासेस में बैठते थे या English, sure.
Okay.
We'll switch to English. So I think this text, even if we have not read this text, but there was this feeling in the classroom when we were sitting in school time in a classroom. What was that feeling? If I'm not wrong, it was that feeling of not given enough space to speak. Or does it really matter what we are reading? So there was some sort of a punishment. There was some sort of a discipline. So I'll probably begin with that understanding of our own stories of school time. If we can think where, and this text will make sense to our stories from the childhood. So education, I studied in army schools. So there was very strict discipline. I was supposed to wear a particular white dress on a Saturday and then some other dress supposed to wear tie in a proper manner, and any teacher will come and just slap you for having longer hair or cut. So, and even in the classroom I couldn't find the space to question teachers. So I have actually been thrown out of the class for asking too many questions or disturbing the class. The term was really disturbing in the class. Successfully I managed to survive because of my decent marks, but otherwise I could see that the class was divided into between the well-educated or the topper students and a complete set of failure students. So the system created failure. This is what my memory recollects from the school. Anybody wants to bring their own specific stories from school days? How was schooling for you?
I studied, but I don't have, I don't know the value of education when I was in school.
Okay.
But somehow with the help of government of Telangana, I came to the youth. Then only after bachelor's, then it's completely kind of sharp for me regarding education and everything.
Oh. Do you love your school? Do you miss your school? Like if you're asked today to go back and redo the schooling together, 12th,
Yeah.
or you miss your school. So what was this particular liking for the school you had? What did you miss the most? Yeah.
Actually, we have some programs in our schools. We enjoyed that programs. I like most in them.
You enjoyed those programs. How was it for you, Rakhi?
For me, I changed like 5 to 6 schools in my entire schooling experience. So it was, and partly my education, maybe schooling, was in South India, in Andhra Pradesh, and then it was in my class 8th. I remember coming back to Delhi. So I've experienced these two kinds of schooling process, and it's diversely different. And जब मैं दिल्ली में आई थी तो मुझे अपना पहला स्कूल का दिन याद है। वो मैं कभी भूल ही नहीं सकती हूँ। पहला दिन मेरी मेमोरी में इस तरीके से है। Oh yes, that first day of my school was like, so I came in South India. I mean, you could relate. So the school was so highly disciplined. There was actually a value of respect within students among each other, and there was this concept. Yes, it was very strict and disciplined, but we used to look forward to our seniors. We used to look up to them in the sense, even when there was no teacher in the classroom, they would be doing their work and nobody was disturbing, and that was the idea I was coming from. And when I landed in Delhi, in one of the schools, teacher was standing there and students were running around the class, and for me that was a huge shock, that how can students perform in such a way in front of a teacher, and teacher is yelling, and these students are running around the class, and they are actually using the slangs, or not even the slangs, what do you call, they are actually abusing each other in that Delhi wala slang, and for me that was a huge shock, which made me think, where did I come? Where have I landed? Yes, where have I landed? And I can never forget that first day of the school in Delhi. Then 1 year I was in that school. Somehow I survived. I switched to next school. I learned some coping mechanisms to make some friends. And over the years I also picked up really strong people-pleasing habits, because I had to gel in. Which I'm learning now, which I'm reflecting now at this point of my life, like what happened in my schooling, the way I am, the way my experiences are. And then I switched another school after my 10th. That was a different experience altogether, not so good.
We'll come to that.
Yes, not so good. I mean, it was, there's a lot of baggage that came from those places.
So the point is, what we did just now is part of Freire's way of educating. So he gives multiple concepts like critical consciousness, critical reflections, connecting education with personal life. It's not like we know the skill, but as a teacher, and if we want to be in this field, this is something which we need to think back, how we can connect with the personal experience to academic concepts. This was just a small demo. The words which came out was like, you said that you miss certain programs in school. She said about the cultural difference between the schools, and then how socialization takes place within a school. And there could be punishment, there could be friendship. So the multiple memories from education, especially schools, come in. Now for the next 5-10 minutes I'll speak, coming to again back to the text. We'll just share with you some of the academic concepts. At this stage it's not expected of any of us to completely understand those concepts, but these are good concepts to probably think on later, and let's all of us think together on this. So one of the concept is operation and liberation. So in this particular text, his consistent theme is that there is operation and there is a need for liberation. Who are oppressed? Why are they oppressed? What are the ways of liberation, and how education can play a crucial role in liberation. So education, there are multiple ways of looking at education. One could be just getting a job. Let's get educated, get a job. MBA, become doctor, become engineer, get a job. Instrumental use of education. And there is one which is liberation. And his understanding of liberation or freedom is very different from the way we understand liberty. For some, it could be just wearing the way we want to, what we want to eat, or whom we want to vote. So it's not just political or economic liberation, but overall liberation in terms of a humanizing project. So he thinks humanity as a project of making this system social just for everyone. So this is his larger understanding of liberation. We'll move to second concept, which is dialogical education. So he's very, very critical of the current system of education, and we also have to place this person, Paul Freire, in a particular context. So he's like, you want to add to his context?
Yes, definitely. Yes. I would. I mean, because I also read about it today. Because I feel that whenever you are reading any, I think it is significant for research altogether, that whenever you are reading anybody, we really need to understand where is that person coming from, what is their context. Even we as researchers, when we are choosing any topic, it tells a lot about us also, like where is that topic coming from and why are we particularly interested in that topic, which is also a part of larger reflection.
Right.
So coming back to the author and talking about the author, he's a philosopher of education, we all know that, and he's from Brazil, and so all of his writings that he has produced over his academic journey are so much embedded in his experience. And experience as a child, what he faced when he encountered hunger. That's where
starvation.
So
he's
hunger,
moved by this.
Yes, he was moved by this.
End starvation, and any sort of oppression.
Yes. And then, and he was also very influenced by his own school teacher, initial years, and that's where I think he was influenced from that how education, his interests were inclined towards education, and how education can really be one of the, wherein he felt that, where he wants to go further into education. And very early he also took on teaching projects as well.
It's interesting, in this text he keeps talking about teaching in not with the school but with the peasants. With the peasants. He's like, if you go and talk to peasants will tell you this is, there are certain officers who come to field and they tell you this is how you should put in fertilizer, this is how you should do training, and then peasants have their own understanding of education. They have their own way of learning things. So he repeatedly mentions to peasants. That's what I wanted to add.
And one more interesting thing is that I read it that he is not calling them as students, rather participants. And the teachers, there was one of this program, adult literacy program, that he was engaged in Brazil, and this was during 1961 to 64, and that was also the time of communist in Brazil.
This is Cold War period, post Second World War.
Yeah. So, and that time when he was given this project, adult literacy program, and he, with this word literacy, he was like, illiterate, again coming from that colonized context, that these are not illiterates. So, like going into the word just going into the concept that these are participants,
Hmm.
and learning is more like a mutual process where teacher, learners, and coordinators and participants he call in that project, they exchange their ideas, through dialogue. And what is that dialogue that you mentioned? Now all of these concepts we are talking about are interrelated as well. The dialogue, which should be democratic in nature. So basically, there is no hierarchy as such, but there is respect. There's mutual respect. There is mutual sense of curiosity for learning in the teacher as well as the student, जो हम layman language में बोलते हैं दोनों की तरफ से. So in that sense, and yeah, so
this is where I'll intervene. That even feminist methodology talks of this breaking hierarchies between the teacher and the student. So we all are placed at equal platform in terms of knowing few things and not knowing more. So we are open to learning from each other. And this is something he repeatedly mentioned. This is something which is to be developed by the teacher. And how a teacher can come to the class and build this trust, build this mutual respect by sharing her own lives about what they have faced in operation. So they don't have to really maintain that image of a person who is sacrosanct, who cannot make mistakes, who knows it all. So this is something which he invites. Just to move on to the next concept, and then we'll come to the reading. So he uses the word praxis a lot. If you read the text, praxis. Any idea what this word can mean? Praxis, practice.
Theory and practice.
Yes. So it is a combination of theory and action. You want to add? Yeah.
Yeah, it's about so in very very general understanding, how I understand is praxis is something that you can bring in action, that you can bring to practice, so that you can really execute, implement out there.
Right. So our idea of Feminist Friday is also this, that it's not just we want to read a feminist text. There is no point in reading Sandra Harding or Uma Chakravarti or anybody else until and unless we are able to practice in our own life. So and when he talks of oppression, so my oppression or your oppression will be very different. And in our society, there are multiple layers of oppression. For somebody, because of their identity, they'll face multiple more oppressions, which probably I will not be facing. But to identify the structural cause of oppression, and first to identify and then to design a strategy to end it, so that you become the charge of your own life. You take control of your life. It's not fatalism. It's not by God. It's not by the destiny. So he questions. So that's why he brings this practice of critical consciousness, critically engaging with the system, and to identify the structures of. That's where a lot of convergence between feminist thinkers, because they're also dealing with their own oppression. As a woman, as a black woman, there will be multiple layers. In India, we have caste-based, identity-based Muslim women facing multiple oppressions. So that way, this text becomes very important. So how do you design a praxis? How do you design a system of ending the oppression? Next is there is this term which is called the banking model. You want to add? Banking model of education.
Banking model is, I think, very simple. When we talked about our schooling experiences, when you said that you were at, whenever you put forth your passions to the teacher just label you as the disturbing element. That is banking. Basically, like right there, considering you as a subject wherein you do not have agency of your own, considering students as the things wherein the teacher is the more knower, but teacher know it all. Their knowledge is more authentic, and the questions that they face from the students, they not only questions, dialogue, participation, their diverse ways of thinking of students in a classroom, which is all curbed or stopped by a teacher by labeling them in the educational models that we have seen, that we have all studied in. Most of us have studied in. I am not going to generalize it. So that is banking, wherein there is the student, the child, or the participant in the class is robbed of their agency, and the teacher has all the control. Teachers got all the control, the dominion in the class. So that's what is the banking model. It's very
Has
simple.
someone experienced this kind of a teaching in class? Okay. So moving ahead, now my question that comes to my mind is, why is somebody running a banking model of education? Why is this education model like this, where a teacher comes, speaks for full time of the class, continuously write on the board, ask us to just note down, mug it up, get score, get out. So why is this system running? Who benefits from the system?
Anybody?
Why do you think in government schools, I'm using the word government school, but in general schools do not allow equal engagement with the teachers and students? Why do you think it's done that way? Is it like designed by God? Is it designed by, who designed this? Why is it running? It has been running this way.
Maybe it is larger discourse that teacher cannot be questioned. She knows everything.
Yeah, exactly. This
That-
is a part
that
of
is
the
one
larger
thing.
discourse.
Yes.
The teacher cannot be questioned. But what we are thinking collectively is, why is this discourse maintained? Who is benefiting
Who
from
is
this discourse? Like if I am a capitalist, if I produce something and I earn profit from it, it's visible, right? I sell product, I earn profit, it's visible. But why is this discourse is invisible? Or if it's, are we able to see the layers beyond this?
Beyond.
Who benefits from this? Because this is what he mentions in seeing the reality. So what is shown to us is actually a curtain. The moment you are able to see beyond the curtain, you will be actually able to identify your oppressor. And this curtain is maintained through media, teachers,
Institutions.
which is what Gramsci talks of hegemony.
Yeah.
So this curtain is very important. So who benefits from this?
Maybe ruling class. As per we, if we go from all those idea of ideological state apparatus, that teachers are mostly from dominant section. Then even any student from marginalized or dominant is also not allowed to question the teacher.
Right.
Especially if it is from marginalized communities, it is more vulnerable condition that they are not even allowed to speak. So if teacher is intended to impart certain dominant ideas, then automatically dominant idea is that any student from lower sections are not they are not allowed to question.
Absolutely.
Thank
You
you so
wanted to add
much.
something? Okay. So this moves me, if I'll add to. So the teachers are from dominant class. You said the word dominant class, right? So if we take this concept of dominant class as teachers and try to look in our own campus, in our own education system, do we find whether it's hold true or not in JNU?
Obviously, it is everywhere.
It is everywhere. It is everywhere. That needs to be acknowledged first.
Yes.
Yeah, and
So-
that is the may I?
Yeah, please.
So I think that is the reflection we need, and absolutely. So coming back to the layers that you were talking about. So even teacher, like अगर हम सिर्फ एक teacher की position, we also need to like unfold that position, and then the larger teacher training that happens, and then the larger education system, which will go to the larger discourse. Then now this education system in its whole is connected with the state, right?
Yeah.
And the larger discourse, the larger discourse that we are mentioning here. Now, how education, it reminds me of that how education at some point can also be used as a tool to reproduce the discrimination, oppression, and unequal power dimensions. At the same time, it's a tool which can actually liberate, the liberation in what Freire is trying to talk about here in this particular context. So it is that sort of a tool education, right? And it's very interesting, like when we are trying to think of and reflect and actually capture reality as it is, as you mentioned, reality as it is, that reflection and to understand reality also comes through education. I mean, and hence I think he's just giving a lot of importance to education and educate and learning and building that reflexive skill, which will eventually lead you to be able to think beyond what is presented right in front of you, and then go beyond it, and then look at what is this operation exactly, not to say exactly, but what is this, just to unpack oppression and where am I placed? Am I the oppressor or I am oppressed? Coming from the context of my own standpoint, my gender, my caste, my religion, my culture, my language, my region, all sorts of dimensions, then whatever we can think of. And so this standpoint, now another interesting thing that he's talking about is that how we are oppressed and as well as the oppressor. And this is the duality he mentions here.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
It's very interesting and a bit complicated, but if you try to analyze it from your own standpoint, I think it will get a bit simpler. Like Patricia Hill Collins, she's one of the black feminists, if you have heard of her, she also talks about it, that we just cannot see things ki either I am an oppressor or I am oppressed. No, I mean, that is just a very limited dimension of looking at oppression as a concept altogether. Rather, what we should try to do is we need to go a little beyond. We need to look at how we are oppressed as well as oppressor in certain context, in certain situation, wherein I have the power dynamics. Now, but the kind of relationship of oppression and oppressed, oppressor and oppressed that Freire is talking about here is also, in the sense, the internalization, wherein I have internalized patriarchy as a woman. I am myself checking my own behavior. I am myself controlling my own attitude because you are a man, I cannot behave in a certain way in front of you. Where is that coming from? From my socialization. And where is that socialization come from? From the patriarchal structure, from the patriarchal socialization. And who has created that at first place? Those power dimensions, the men, the privileges, the power. So, hence all these things. So, yeah.
Just to add to taking this conversation further, he talks of alienation, that how our education system will first alienate you from your outside, because it is assumed that the world is outside and I'm here to understand the world. So the assumption is a dichotomy between you and the world. So like we say in science, like we experiment and we go and check gravity by dropping something. So it's assumed that the world is outside. But then he asks to always break this dichotomy between you and the world. So there is, you are the one who is creating the world. And there's an interesting question which is asked, what if the whole of mankind happened to disappear from the earth? So will there be a world still existing? Exactly. So the answer, first it appears, yes, the world will exist because plants, species, other will exist. But he says it will not be called world then, because it's humans who have understood this as reality and the world. So without us, there is no world also. And the moment if we start looking at things from this non-dual perspective, he keeps talking about the poles. Like we have to keep shifting from the poles. Let's not stick to one pole. There is also one understanding, like I have consciousness, right? Our common understanding is I have consciousness and this is object. This is, I have consciousness, this is object. And this comes from Husserl's philosophy of phenomenology, where he talks of that consciousness and object are treated as two different, but there cannot be any consciousness. So every consciousness has intentionality. So what intentionality means? That object will come only in existence in relationship with consciousness. So consciousness is not in isolation. It is connected with the object itself. And this is a little philosophical, but it helps to understand that as a species, as a humanity, when we think of liberation, so we cannot think of liberation of one section only. We cannot be just Marxist and not look for environment, or we cannot be just feminist and not consider caste-based oppression or gender-based oppression. So intersectionality comes into play when we look at the world is just an extension of each one's consciousness. So that was something, and alienation, an education system is the first steps which creates the alienation. By constantly reminding of you, actually not reminding, in a way cutting your creativity, cutting your thoughts, cutting your ability to speak for yourself. how hard it is to speak in front of a teacher first, and then we stop talking in front of parent, then tomorrow political leaders. So it makes a submissive individual. It makes somebody who will not, take the in charge of their own destiny. So liberation becomes, and this is where it comes that how oppressor are the one who is maintaining the system, which in the name of welfare also, he uses the term welfare state, in the name of welfare. So he says that anybody who is elite cannot be in the process of liberation. They might look they are liberating you. So any state provision, or for that matter capitalist philanthropy, will look like education. They are doing so much for education. They are giving poor people this computer education stuff, donating clothes. Every act of an oppressor is to maintain their oppression. It's benevolent patriarchy. It's a benevolent way of saying that we are good. A man could look good by practicing benevolent patriarchy. So we have to understand it's very, very shrewd way of maintaining power, which education is the primary tool to do that. Yeah.
So further, he's also sort of making it that how this charity is like the to say it in very simple words, that it's the worst thing that they can do. Should celebrate it. If somebody is doing that sort of charity, if somebody is helping you out in that way, what is that help doing to you? That concept of help, like what is that help doing to you? And then thinking through all of this, let's come back to the pedagogy.
Right.
Like what when he's saying, when he's trying to build this argument through his readings and his work, that that your oppressor will never think good of you because of the power that she because of the power that they maintain. That's there will always be an attempt to secure it. There will always be an attempt to control the way things have that to reproduce the things जो जैसे चलते आ रही हैं. So now, so here pedagogy becomes very important, and then here he brings in the importance of oppressed, and that what kind of pedagogy and what do we understand by pedagogy? I'll just put that simply first. Pedagogy is like a way of, if you would want to contribute, that would be nice.
What is understand?
What
it's okay if you're not understand. What is pedagogy?
What is pedagogy? It's simple. Like what do you understand by pedagogy?
What it could be? Pedagogy could be.
Yeah, it is way of teaching. Thank you.
We all are practicing a particular way of pedagogy at this point. So we are engaging. It's also a style of
So pedagogy is way of teaching. So and this name of the book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. So the way of teaching. Now education, teaching and oppressed. What is their role and what is this pedagogy that we can rethink so that we can sort of locate these relationships and understand the operation and how then therefore it can be changed. So he's saying that the liberation cannot come from there. Hence, to change that idea of liberation also, that even he's talking, it's very interesting. I'm sorry if I'm going here and there because there are a lot of ideas that are bumping into my head and I'm sort of constantly trying to articulate how can I put it forward in very simple words. So that this pedagogy, critical pedagogy, is always going to come from the oppressed. Why? He's talking about humankind very beautifully here, that when somebody is oppressing you, they're not realizing that they are also not liberated in themselves, because you are consuming your lot of time and energy to put a control, to put those institutions and just to in place and your power and everything. Is that real liberation? That's what he's questioning. So what is this liberation? And then he's coming back to the oppressed and the minorities, that when they are questioning their control and dominance, they're also trying to restore the humanity within them, which they have lost at first place. And because they have lost that humanity at first place, they want to control another human being. You know, because I am so selfish that I want to maintain the power, the wealth, the resources that I have. So I want to control you. You know, and when I control you, I am also putting a lot of time. But is it my liberation?
You are dehumanized.
I am dehumanized because there's no compassion, kindness of me towards you.
Treating others as object.
Yes, you know.
Also grabbing their resources.
Yeah. So
it is.
Yeah. So hence he's saying hence we need to think of this liberation in altogether a different sense in terms of humankind and what does it to be a human, which is also like very anthropological and sociological and ethnographical larger question that we sort of try to find, like what does it to be a human, what are human relationships, what does it to be a humankind. So now coming back to the pedagogy, and that it is the oppressed that they will create that pedagogy. And how will they create? How will that pedagogy come into place? You know, yes, by resistance to that power, and by resistance to that power, and he's bringing a very important role of violence also. I mean, if you've read it.
I'll just add one point.
Yeah, please.
So this reminds me of Ambedkar's text and the concept called epistemic advantage. So certain people, because of their oppression, they have a particular way of looking at things. They get advantage. So I cannot write for Muslim women. I have not experienced it. So if you are located in that particular location, which might look oppressed, which actually is systematically very challenging, but it gives you the unique opportunity and an advantage to look things from that perspective, which nobody else can. So the challenge lies to capture the expression, capture that knowledge, and bring it to the larger discourse, like which is again challenging, but to first acknowledge that it's epistemic advantage of somebody who's oppressed, and it could be a very liberating thought in a way. Like,
And he also talks about the praxis. It's all about the experience, that it has to come from the experiences of the oppressed. It has to come from the experiences of women. It has to come from the experiences of Dalit women, Muslim women, women of color, Dalit Muslim women, and you know, all sorts of standpoints, diverse, subjugated and minority standpoints that we have, which could be, you know, a transgender, trans people, all sorts of जो भी हमारे spectrum में है ना? So it's really interesting to look at all of this and then think about you capture that experience, and then you also in that pedagogy there is a reflection involved, that you are reflecting on those experiences, and then through that reflection, you bring a change. You bring a change first within yourself at individual level. You bring that change within yourself by capturing your own experience and by understanding that reality, that, you know, of the oppressor, by understanding the larger oppressor, that who is at the power play. Coming back to the same, linking the things here.
There's an interesting risk. Please come to the risk. Please.
So you said marginalized groups have epistemic advantage. Even oppressed also have. Like they have advantage that they can how to say, they have advantage of oppressing. Like then they also have. So today we discussed about Donna Haraway situated knowledge. So in that article she said like no episteme is advantageous episteme. There is no epistemic advantages. Rather, everything is situated. We have everything has partial perspective. So we have to bring together all those perspectives and have to look at it in a broader way.
So my just question will be is, if we look at, let's suppose this is reality we're trying to understand. Okay. Now earlier understanding was that some section has larger access to the reality, so I'll be the elite, I'll maintain the discourse about this particular aspect. Now reading like Donna Haraway helped us understand, okay, everybody has this, so there is no higher or lower, everybody has the unique access to this reality. So you are able to see it from that perspective. So all our perspective are equally important. Now I feel, maybe I'm wrong at this point, by using this logic, what you're doing is you're actually taking power from somebody who could have brought it in a very different manner,
Unique
more
way,
more
yeah.
more unique way, because if you say everybody is equal, right, so that uniformity actually hides the internal differences.
Yeah.
So a Dalit woman or a Muslim woman, I believe, have epistemic advantage to study this reality from that particular context, which upper class white men will never have. So it's not equal access to reality, it's differentiated access to reality.
Yes.
So that's something which and the risk is, I mean, adding to, I hope you have covered your cover. So the risk which he talks about is, if the oppressed and the oppressor, let's suppose oppressed have understood they are oppressed, now there is a movement, and now the movement will have leaders. Now the leaders have the risk. What is the risk? That they will actually fall into the trap of the oppressed system of movements, which is that the one leader will become tall, and the tall leader will tell, this is the propaganda, this is what you should do. So they'll go into the preaching mode. Now this is exactly the framework which the oppressor were following. So you'll find a lot of critiques comes from the left and even the Dalit movement, that the leaders have, or the teachers who have come from that community, have not done enough for the community. If they isolate themselves from the community. So it repeatedly talks of working not for the people, working with the people. Be with the people, learn from the people, do not have that power difference, and be that kind of a leadership. So there's a slippery slope that leader might fall into.
Which is again, this slippery slope is becoming the oppressor.
So oppressed,
Actually,
oppressed can become an oppressor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that is. So this reminds me of also like considering diverse perspectives into. Acknowledging them and understanding them. He also talks about, Freire also talks about at some point that in dialogue. So what kind of dialogue it should be, and what kind of dialogue can be established to be more reflective, to be more respectful to each other. And he's coming from very that humankind ideas that it should be respectful and it should be of that space in itself needs to be very democratic, that everyone in there needs to have that space wherein they can freely express themselves and where they are heard, and then diverse perspectives are also brought in consideration, and there's learning, but this is a very later stage process. This is a very later stage process of dialogue. First actually going through understanding this pedagogy, and then understanding that you in the process, and it's a process. He continuously comes back to this, that it's a process.
He calls it process because he thinks that reality, our education system makes us believe that reality is objective, reality is static, and reality is not moving basically. Whether you consider any reality, let's suppose family, it's considered as a static structure or state or anything like. So if we consider reality as static, it is only an oppressor's discourse. They'll teach you it's static. But human as a being is different from animal. And what is the difference? What is the difference between human as a species and animal as a species? Thinking, okay. Animal also think. They think whom to kill. An elephant won't kill a tortoise. They'll eat, they'll think and drink water from a lake. So they think.
I think for me it's language. Like very advanced level of language.
Dolphins communicate through their own language.
They do, but like very kind. I mean, the way I look at language, very advanced kind
India,
of language.
I'm saying India. Humans have their own unique advantage of language. But what could be the other differences? But animals have language.
Yeah, they do.
We don't understand dogs' language, but they do have a language.
Yeah.
Do we call it a language?
But you get to recently, I mean, I've never been a dog person, and now I'm like, there's this dog who I've got really connected with because it's a friend's dog, and you understand. You build a connectivity. You build a connectivity.
I have a weird thought. I think at night dogs are communicating, thinking that we humans don't have language, or we bark a lot.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's possible that dogs know very well that at night time it's our space, that they own the world.
Yeah.
They might be thinking just like us, or maybe different. But what I'm saying is, what is fundamental difference between humans and animals? Animals have language. Animals think.
Humans produce.
Animals also produce.
We study.
We study.
Capitalization also, no? I mean,
No, he says it's only the ability to critically reflect on your own actions. So if today if I've hurt somebody, so I can go back at night and think and reflect and probably reshape my actions tomorrow. So I'm not driven by this instant desire of either feeding myself or procreating. So animals are primarily driven by these two forces, to survive. But to critically think is the only difference. That's why humans are never human as a glass. So I'm not Shri as in a static Shri, or you're not somebody as static. We are always, and the term uses becoming.
we are always,
We are always becoming. So this is a very existential philosophical thought of consider something as becoming. So you're always free to choose. You're always consciously, you can always design your destiny. So it's multiple options are available. So you are not a being. Human is not a being but a becoming. So the becoming comes from his reading of Sartre and other existential philosophers like Kierkegaard. They talk of becoming. And this was one point. Like reality, he talks of something like Buddhism, that reality is always transitional, and as a human we are always being, which is very liberating. Like, if you understand
that
that,
you can
create your own destiny.
Yeah, you can create, and through your actions. And how do you? But again, it goes to that basic thing that first what you have to do is you have to really at individual level transform yourself.
Right.
It's like there's this line where he's saying that it's like you have to newborn. It's completely a newborn.
Yeah.
And then that's when the transformation, the process of transformation.
And he gives the detailed explanation how that newborn is very messy. Newborn is very. So if you go back and tomorrow talk to your parents about having a marriage from a different community, so it creates that chaos and energetic fights. So every time a person is newborn, any change will have its own messiness.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Who's that person? I forgot. Any change is very difficult in the beginning and messy in the middle, but gorgeous in the end. Someone says it. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I was thinking this like in context of women and gender. So like whenever we are all the feminist literature, we are trying to understand what is this category of woman. It's not a homogeneous category. It's not, and it's a socially constructed category because it is placed in patriarchy. So now when we are thinking, what is it to be a woman? It's like then what do? We don't know what is it to be a woman because we were told we will be women by doing so and so things, by being a mother, by getting married to somebody, by controlling the house, by doing all the domestic chores and all of that.
Simone de Beauvoir's one is not born woman but becomes
yes, that's
so it's constantly in the process of becoming a woman.
Yeah. And what Freire is also saying here is in this process of becoming, sometimes in the transformation, कि हम लोगों को liberation का मतलब, when we are thinking, we'll also struggle with these concepts so much. Sometimes we'll think that liberating is to become like your oppressor, to become like that. I mean, there is, if you read
Yeah, I
that
remember.
part,
If poor person is dreaming to become a rich person,
then
so it's actually
that's liberation for
it's
him.
liberation. So yeah,
Yeah.
I can dream of car and new
Yeah.
clothes, but that's
And then that
is
reminded
the,
me of the concept of Sanskritization, like the caste. So
Mm.
what is it to be, to liberate, to actually, for the Dalit household, for a Dalit man, woman, they were told to be like, if you have to do away with the caste resistance is to look like the upper caste men, to talk like upper caste women, to be like how their household rituals are to perform. That's what is Sanskritization.
upward mobility, basically.
Upward mobility, but looking forward to you, looking for up to your oppressor, and just copying pasting it. But वो liberation है क्या? Again, that is one of the questions that we need to ask in there. What he's pointing at, and which is, इसीलिए he's saying that it is a new birth altogether. It's not copying somebody, it's a new, you have to find that within you, that new human being, your own individual capacity, which will come from education.
And there is no given script for that. It's
Yes.
not like there is a plan, this is how you should be. Because that is something which you design on your own.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will reflect, you'll figure out, you will see what works for you, what you, what you're good at, what is your inherent skill, or skill, for that matter, skill is something that can be built also, in that sense. So then I was thinking in terms of women, I was thinking just this one, that how even in feminism, then a lot of women we see around, what is it, how those habits are inculcated. Then we'll be like men. Being men is like liberating. Then we are not, then we are feminist. One of the idea of coming from one kind of idea of being feminist is to be like men, which is very, again, constricting in its nature. So
all the women
again,
leaders, if the women leader, let's suppose women leader, they join military. So it's not like it becomes a feminist space. It is military. It is men's space. So you become men to feel powerful. If a tomorrow women leader, do not marry somebody like who क्या बोलते हैं उसको, साध्वी. So it's like you are giving up on your womenness to fit into the role of a men's world. So that's not actually liberating. It's becoming the oppressor itself.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll just because we have, although in the conversation we have touched upon the keywords, it's also good to read some aspect of it. So chapter 1, we'll read the last. I have highlighted the text also. I'll just read the last in a way concluding remark. So that we can just bring the things together also. This is chapter 1, page number 69. I'll read from the freedom part, which is page number 68, somewhere in the middle I've highlighted. Are we able to open it? Okay.
68.
Yes, 68, the center part which is highlighted. Freedom. So he is talking about that it's just we are fighting not to just end hunger. Hunger becomes starting point of his questioning the system, but it's not the end. So they must realize that they are fighting not merely for freedom from hunger, but for freedom. And this is where freedom is. Freedom to create and to construct, to wonder and to venture. Such freedom requires that individual be active and responsible, not a slave or a well-fed cog in the machine. It is not enough that men are not slaves. If social conditions further the existence of automation, the result will not be to love for life, but love for death. So he keeps bringing this love for life and love for death. So he believes that if any sort of a restriction or any sort of capitalistic way of looking at, utilitarian way of looking at things, it actually converts an organic into inorganic. So it kills that thing. So if tomorrow I'll see somebody as merely my driver, but not as a person, so I kill that person. I kill life in that person because I don't have love for life. So it's love for death actually. Now the struggle begins with men's recognition that they have been destroyed. Propaganda, management, manipulation, all are the arms of domination. Cannot be the instrument of rehumanizing. So we cannot use propaganda to rehumanize because it's an instrument of oppression. Management, manipulation. The only effective instrument is humanizing pedagogy. in which the revolutionary leaders establish a permanent relationship of dialogue with the oppressed. Permanent relationship with dialogue is the key here. So it has to be dialogue and permanent with oppressed. In a humanizing pedagogy, the method ceases to be instrument by which teachers can manipulate the student because it expresses the consciousness of the student themselves. So teachers cannot manipulate their student. This method is in fact the external form of consciousness manifest in acts, which takes on the fundamental property of consciousness, which is what you talked of, intentionality. So the essence of consciousness is being with the world, and this behavior is permanent and unavoidable. Accordingly, the consciousness is the essence, a way towards something apart from itself, outside itself, which surrounds it and which is apprehended by the means of ideational capacity. Consciousness is thus by definition a method in which most general sense of the world. Now, a revolutionary leadership must accordingly practice co-intentional education. The teachers and student leaders and people co-intent on reality and both subjects, but only in the task of unveiling the reality. So this word unveiling the reality, because reality is very covered, it's very layered. So you have to unveil it, and thereby coming to act on it critically, but is the task of co-creating the knowledge. As they attain the knowledge of reality through common reflection and actions, they discover themselves in the permanent co-creator. In this way, the presence of oppressed in the struggle of their liberation will be what it should be, not pseudo-participation. What could be pseudo-participation? What could be pseudo-participation? What a pseudo-participation will look like?
Saying something.
Yes. In fact, your own leader speaking on your behalf.
Yeah.
If leader speaks on your behalf, it is pseudo-participation. Unless the leader is with the people. Academicians talking about social change and they're not practicing it.
Yeah, just a very simple example of caste and gender within our all the spaces, even in our classrooms, in our universities, wherever we go. We say even policies are created for that matter like that.
Yeah.
You know.
Bureaucrats.
Yeah, but anyway, that's different politics because it's another sort of lot of layering and discussions required there. But how caste is also very institutional, gender is also very institutional. Although in the classroom we talk about that it's a democratic space for every individual. But then again, when just by the look of yours, by the physical bodily presence of yours, it makes all the difference. And right then and there, that dynamics is created. That this is a woman student, this is a female student, this is a male student, and it's just very covered again. You know, which is known, which is called as hidden curriculum. The aspects of hidden curriculum. Yeah.
And there is this next chapter. I have highlighted one part which we can read, which is page number 72, the bottom part. In the banking concept of education, here he is bringing this, how do we test, like just a test for everyone, if we go into a classroom and find a teacher, and then how do we test that whether whether there is no hierarchy or hierarchy between the teachers? How do you physically test it? Like, is this space hierarchical?
Yes.
Dais, yes. Camera. Who is taking more time in speaking?
Yeah.
So this is hierarchical.
Yeah.
Age is hierarchy. Maybe
Yes.
somebody is from master, somebody is
Yeah.
from. So these
Even
are
the language,
The
the way
language.
we're talking,
Yes.
even the way the dress, even in research methodology, the way you dress also becomes one of the parameters of establishing that power relations in a field also, and which happens in general life.
So here it's important, how do you check for it? In the banking concept of education, knowledge is gift which is bestowed by those who consider themselves knowledgeable upon those whom they know nothing. So the projection and absolute ignorance onto others are characteristics of ideology of oppression. This is the typical characteristics of an oppression, that they deliver knowledge. Negates education and knowledge as a process of inquiry. The teacher presents themselves to his student as their necessary opposite by considering, and this is a line which I find interesting, is by considering their ignorance absolute, he justifies its own existence. By considering their ignorance absolute, he justifies his own existence. The student alienate like the slave in Hegelian dialectic, accepts their ignorance as justify the teacher's existence. But unlike the slave, they never discover that they educate the teacher. Now, this particular line talks of Hegelian dialectic. Marx dialectic, we are aware that haves and have-nots have constant struggle. So Marx borrowed this concept of dialectic from Hegel. Hegel talks of dialectics in ideas. So there is synthesis, because thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. Now, what he is talking is that in Hegelian dialectic, so there is master, there is slave. There is a dialectic between them. Now, like students and teachers, there is a dialectic. There is a power difference in dialectic. Now, the students, we think that teacher is there to teach. Teacher is there to teach, but the opposite is also true. That because there are students, that's why there is a teacher. So the teacher's existence is actually derived from students. This is their line. But unlike the slave, they never discovered that they educate the teacher. They are the one, unlike they're different from slaves. Because they are the one here to educate the teacher, and the teacher derives its meaning because of the presence of student. Which is
student-centric classroom.
Student-centric classroom. Yeah.
Student-centric spaces. That's what.
Yeah. And so we find that banking system has common understanding, which is given in these points. That teacher knows when students are taught. A teacher talks and students listen. This is a lot of us, like I might have experienced this kind of behavior, where teacher is the subject of learning process and the pupils are merely objects. So feminist research methodology, repeatedly, as a research scholar, we are repeatedly told to not to treat your subjects as objects. So they are, when we go on field, when we talk to survivors, students, anybody who's our research. So it's actually important to negate the power difference between subject and object dichotomy. So they are to be treated with with dignity. And how does our research, any research for that matter, which is not done with the people, which is not contributing for the people, is actually extractive research. So all our social science research methodologies, all except action research, becomes extractive. So this is coming from a recently book I read on action research by Greenwood, all social science research. Because once we go on field and write a paper on it, we are not contributing to anything on the life directly to the people, or at least it's not done with the people. So, which is reflected in this, again, oppressives, we are feeding into the oppressive structure of academics if we are creating that kind of a knowledge. Yeah.
So basically the same conventions are repeated over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, most of things are after that repeated only. Yeah, the leadership I have mentioned, intentionality we have covered. Anything you want to have a thought or you want to question, add? It's a big text. We have talked of becoming as a process of human. It's a big text. We can read the last part, which is chapter 2, last paragraph. I'll read some part of it. Because mostly what he does is in every chapter he summarizes to the end. So if we miss something, we'll come across during this reading. So the problem posing educations. So he talks of two kinds of education: problem posing education, which is a humanist and a liberating praxis, which is he's inviting us to practice that kind of education, which is problem posing education praxis. First, a fundamental that people subject to domination must fight for their emancipation. People who are dominated, it's their job, they have to fight for their emancipation, nobody else can do it. Okay? To that end, it enables the teachers and the student to become subject of educational process by overcoming authoritarian and alienating intellectualism. What is this alienating intellectualism? If somebody have seen this kind in JNU, or
make it a little bit simpler.
Alienating intellectualism. It is simple. Alienating and intellectualism. What could be intellectualism? So if we start
publishing more papers.
publishing more papers, so if we
which
start,
is,
yeah.
which you're not even which you're not even connected with, or you're not even like work with those ideas in your own life.
Yeah.
You know.
Alienating intellectualism, yeah.
Mm.
And even language for that matter is easily alienating. So if we right now we start speaking in certain language and probably English, which other students in the class don't understand, so it is intellectualism. We are talking, we are in a conference, it happens a lot. One of the critique of Mosaic was this, when we at Mosaic, that festival happened in JNU. So what, because it's so elitist, it's not talking about the problems of what students are facing right now in JNU. So if I don't have water in my hostel, and if I'm struggling for food, and then in conferences I go and I see they're conversing around postmodernism, they're writing. So it's actually your intellect is actually alienated from the ground, the problem which the students and probably teachers are facing. So get rooted into that. It also enables people to overcome their false perception of reality. He repeatedly talks of look at the reality, which is covered, uncover it, try to unpack it through critical questioning. And interestingly, his understanding of reality is very different from other understanding of. We have read that there are partial realities, right? You see partially, I see partially, so everybody sees partially. This becomes postmodernist thought. None of our view is absolute because we all see partially. Now what happens with this is, it actually kills or it actually reduces your anger, frustration to fight for the change. Because everybody is true, no? Everybody have their own opinion, everybody is relativistic approach. Now he's saying no, it's not. It's actually possible to look through political, economical, social, cultural system in complete totality. So he's inviting us repeatedly to look at system in totality of the reality.
Also yourself as a human.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Now the word no longer something to be described and deceptive words, so becomes the object of the transformation action by men and women, which results in their humanization. Problem posing education does not and cannot serve the interest of oppressor. No oppressive order could permit the oppressed to begin to question why. While only a revolutionary society can carry out education in a systematic manner, revolutionary leadership need not take full power before they employ the method. In the revolutionary process, the leadership cannot utilize the banking model as an interim measure justified on the ground of expediency and intend to later behave in the genuine revolutionary fashion. They may be revolutionary, that is to say dialogical from the outside. This is what difference between Gandhian movement of nationalism and what happened in Russian Revolution. So revolution was justified, but in the name of even the violence was justified by Marxist revolution in this name that as a leader decides, Stalin decide or Lenin decide this is good for society, so let's transform. So it's very hierarchical. We are following the structure of oppression. And what Gandhi and national movement, at least my understanding of Congress-led movement, is the constant engaging with multiple stakeholders, making sure that it's a non-violent dialogical movement. So in the process, you're creating new leaderships. In the process, you're engaging with multiple people, and we can disagree on the national movement itself. It's a very different ways of looking at national.
Yeah.
But I'll stop for now at this, and if you want to add, you could add, or others can add in this. We just have 5 more minutes, I think, 5 to 10 minutes if you want to. Have we missed some concept, you think? We might have missed a lot actually.
Yeah, because it's like, I just called him today around 3 and I was like, are you sure in 1 hour can we do this book? Because when I was reading through it, there were a lot of things that were coming to me that are very important and can be discussed like in depth, you know.
Okay.
Like I was just thinking maybe if we could devote like 1 chapter, 1 hour to each chapter, you know, and bring a lot of what is happening in the Indian education system today, and then how we understand this person, this author, this thinker, and philosopher of education.
We can do that now.
In the next session.
Okay.
Like in the contemporary education system, what is happening, you know, and then the larger politics and how we can draw the relevance of those concepts in that sense.
So like if you have just before we sum it up and close it.
Although we started on
bring-
that note, we
Yeah,
started
yeah.
on the experiences and tried to think about our own process of schooling and how can we understand the concepts that he's trying to give us.
So we got over optimistic and over enthusiastic about this reading actually. You
Yeah.
should see.
When for the
Yeah.
first time I read it, I got really excited.
Yeah.
Although I didn't understand half of the things.
Please
but
read it.
few things.
This is no substitute of not reading the
your
text.
own
Yeah,
self.
yeah,
It's just
yeah.
like your own reading and understanding and your own liberation. It's you have to do.
Yeah.
No one else can do it for
Yeah.
you. And this is what, it's just quoting
Probably we
him.
try to be oppressor again by
by just pretending that we are the most know it all and we are reading. But that happens all the time. But at least we are able to label and recognize it. And probably there may be some sort of things.
So if a propaganda is, it's actually propaganda to promote this text. Just read. So the concepts like praxis, concepts like humanizing, concepts like banking model, concepts like critical consciousness, intentionality and consciousness, reality being becoming. So these are the things which help us, read more. Like these.
The
build
questions, the
conversations.
curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you want to?
So I just wanted to ask to
Yeah.
extend some of the concepts like culture of ignorance, culture of silence.
Culture of silence. I have written it that.
Yeah, culture of
Yeah.
ignorance. Please, you want to add?
I'm
You want to
just
add?
culture of
What do you
silence.
think culture of silence could be? The word culture and silence.
Yeah.
I mean, if I can give example, in family, do we speak of sexual harassment? Can we sit and talk of sexual harassment? Why?
Because family is structured in certain way. Like in sociality, there is one thinker called Bernstein. He talks about family codes. Like there are two codes, like restricted code and elaborated code. So it is more likely the restricted code that operates in lower class families where there is no agency of the children to discuss anything. Whereas in upper class, they have some, kind of agency that is very termed as elaborated code.
Right. So this culture of silence is, my understanding is, people in power, they design culture. The culture itself is coming from, again, Gramsci's concept of hegemony. So the culture ensures that something could be talked, but on some things there will always be silence. So because the moment we start talking about it, it has that element of overturning the power. So talking of sexual harassment in the family, the culture will actually bring about cases against probably the relatives in the family itself. So you are actually turning the power structure within family. So there could be multiple examples of culture of silence. I'm just, you want to add, please?
No, I'll just extend and add on to it that how oppressed, they are so trained, socialized and hegemonized in this culture of silence, and that culture has not even given them tools for the curiosity to question the language also, and to how to like even talk about it.
Right.
Because you do not have that culture is just so controlling in itself, and that is culture of silence, and that it is the miserable condition that oppressed is created largely by the socio-economic, political and all of those larger context and discourse, because that is just a perfect way to curb their questioning and to basically not let them speak, to devoid them of their agency. That is culture of silence. And what can be done here? What is Paulo Freire proposing? What can be done is the reflection, the knowledge. Once that reflection comes, that knowledge comes, acknowledgement within you that how the reflection of the society, historical conditions, and he's actually he's taken a lot from the consciousness itself, that recognizing that consciousness in itself, and how that culture of silence can be deconstructed, and then the resistance in the form of questioning and so much experiences embedded knowledge can come out, so that the operation can be
This reminds me of conversation with one of my friend. She talked of that from childhood in her family. She's the eldest sister, taking care of 3 other siblings. From childhood, she was actually doing the mothering role, taking cooking, cleaning, and everything. She was doing everything from childhood. So the burden of labor, because she is gender in a particular way, so her education, her exam, everything is affected by that, including her mental health. Now, the moment she started speaking about this, that why I'm the one who is taking care of this, why I have to cook, why I have to clean. So the moment you break the culture of silence, it's actually questions the power structure within the family. Now, so I believe that culture of silence is not just there is silence which is not spoken, but also which is spoken to distract what is to be said. I could think of the way upper caste look at lower caste as lazy, as in a way that they are alcoholic. So their way of so they will never be having this cultural dialogue with the oppressed sections, oppressed caste, thinking that they are not worthy of the conversation. So it's not like the culture of silence means absolute silence in the word, literal meaning. So it's actually the distracting the actual conversation. So I cannot think of conversation, at least in my circles, where you find that there's a conversation around domestic violence happening among men, sitting and then discussing the domestic violence in their extended family. So coming from Haryana, so we have cases where cousins have died because of domestic violence, because of dowry death. But so the conversation will always be around sexuality of the women, the way we see women, but it's not. Are you getting me? So the conversation is distractive. So that culture is built of a conversation which helps us to regain being the oppressed always. It's just a food for thought we can. We have great sessions.
Yeah.
More than what we planned, and we should read more on similar text. Just to announcement, in a way, this is also the platform for everybody. So if you are reading some text, like you mentioned Sandra Harding, probably you are reading something sociology, which I was not aware of. The one you said family has 2 codes, right? So if you are reading any text which you think you want to just speak to the larger audience, practice your own presentation styles. So it's we are open to that.
Yeah.
Just join the group. Let us know. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can we have a picture and then
So should we stand there?